A stunning man sat down beside me and said, "Your husband is seeing my wife." Then he leaned in, smirked and whispered, "Forget him, come out with me tonight." I said yes immediately and it changed my life. "Your husband is seeing my wife." I looked up from my laptop. A stranger sat down beside me, not across from me, beside me, close enough that I could smell expensive cologne and see the exhaustion in his eyes. He was the kind of handsome that made you forget what you were doing. Sharp jawline, dark blonde hair, blue-gray eyes that held something dangerous and honest at the same time. Before we continue, I want to thank you for being here. If you believe in choosing yourself and finding real love after betrayal, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more people who need to hear this. Now let's see what happened next. "I'm Marcus," he said, "and your husband Andrew has been sleeping with my wife Elena for 6 months. He slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a photo of Andrew, my Andrew, with his hand on another woman's face, looking at her the way he used to look at me. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. The coffee shop noise faded into nothing. Marcus leaned in closer. His smirk was slow and deliberate. "Forget him. Come out with me tonight." I should have said no. Should have walked away. Should have done anything except what I actually did. "Yes," I said immediately. That single word changed everything. My name is Hannah. I'm 31 years old. And this is the story of how a stunning stranger destroyed my marriage and gave me back my life. But to understand how I got here, sitting in a Starbucks on Capitol Hill saying yes to a man I'd known for less than 5 minutes, I need to take you back to the beginning. To the life I thought I was living before Marcus appeared and showed me the truth. I met Andrew 7 years ago at a networking event in downtown Seattle. I was 24, fresh out of grad school with an MBA and dreams bigger than my student loan debt. He was 26, working as a financial analyst at a prestigious investment firm. The event was one of those awkward professional mixers where everyone stands around drinking cheap wine and pretending to care about synergy and market disruption. I was about to leave early when Andrew approached me near the bar. "You look like you'd rather be literally anywhere else," he said with an easy smile. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Only to someone who feels exactly the same way." We talked for 2 hours after everyone else had left. About our careers, our ambitions, our frustrations with corporate culture. He was sharp and funny. Had this way of making me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room. By the time we said goodbye, he'd asked for my number and I'd given it without hesitation. Our first date was dinner at a small Italian place in Capitol Hill. Our second was a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands. By date 3, I knew I was falling for him. Within 18 months we were engaged. Within 3 years married. The early years felt like I'd won some kind of lottery. Andrew was attentive and romantic. He'd leave notes on the bathroom mirror before work. Surprise me with flowers on random Tuesdays. We'd spend entire weekends in bed talking about everything and nothing. We bought a small craftsman house in Ballard and talked about filling it with kids someday. Our friends envied us. They'd tell us at dinner parties how lucky we were to have found each other, how natural we seemed together, how they wished their relationships had what ours did. I believed them. I believed we were special. That we'd figured out something other couples hadn't. But somewhere around year 3 the foundation started to crack. Andrew got promoted to senior analyst. He came with a significant raise but also brutal hours and constant stress. He started coming home later and later, bringing work frustrations with him. The man who used to ask about my day with genuine interest now barely looked up from his laptop during dinner. My career was demanding too. I'd landed a senior marketing position at a tech startup downtown. The work was exciting but all-consuming. Long hours. High pressure. Constant deadlines. We stopped making time for each other. Date nights became scheduling conflicts. Weekend trips disappeared entirely. Our conversations became transactional. Whose turn to buy groceries, whether we'd paid the electric bill, what time we needed to leave for his company event. The intimacy disappeared slowly, like water evaporating from a glass you don't notice until it's empty. Sex went from passionate to routine to rare. We stopped touching each other with intention. Our bedroom became a place where we slept on opposite sides of the bed, careful not to accidentally make contact. I told myself it was normal. That every marriage goes through phases. That we just needed to push through the rough patch and things would get better. But the rough patch never ended. It just became our new normal. Around 6 months ago things got noticeably worse. Andrew started working late more frequently. Client dinners. Emergency meetings. Weekend conferences. He joined a gym after work, said he needed to de-stress. Started buying expensive cologne I never saw him wear around the house. He changed his phone passcode without mentioning it. Started taking calls in the other room. Kept his phone face down on the counter constantly. When I suggested we take a vacation together, he said work was too busy. When I planned a date night, he canceled last minute. When I asked if everything was okay between us, he got defensive. Said I was being paranoid. That I was creating problems where there weren't any. So I stopped asking. I started doubting my own instincts. Wondering if maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't interesting enough anymore. Maybe I'd let myself go. Maybe if I tried harder, cooked better meals, wore prettier clothes, lost a few pounds, he'd come back to me. But deep down I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to look at it directly. That's how I ended up spending my afternoons at this Starbucks instead of going home. Our house felt too quiet. Too full of everything we weren't saying to each other. Here, surrounded by strangers and white noise, I could pretend everything was fine. My best friend Rebecca kept telling me I needed to confront Andrew. Demand answers. Insist on couples therapy. She'd noticed the change in me over the past year. How I smiled less. Talked about my marriage less. Made excuses when she suggested double dates with her and her husband. But I was afraid of what I'd find if I pulled that thread. Afraid the whole thing would unravel. So I kept pretending. Kept working. Kept waiting for things to magically get better. Until this Wednesday afternoon when Marcus sat down beside me and pulled the thread himself. After he showed me that photo, Andrew with his hand on Elena's face, looking at her with tenderness I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year, everything suddenly made sense. The late nights. The changed passcode. The cologne. The gym membership. The distance. All of it clicked into place like pieces of a puzzle I'd been refusing to see as a complete picture. 6 months. Marcus said 6 months. That meant Andrew had started this affair right around the time things got noticeably worse between us. Right around the time he stopped trying. Stopped pretending. Stopped showing up. I stared at that photo on Marcus's phone, feeling something crack open in my chest. Not heartbreak exactly. Something colder. Sharper. Clarity. The marriage was already over. Andrew had made that decision without me. I was just the last to know. How do you know who I am? I managed to ask. Marcus leaned back slightly, giving me space to process. I hired a private investigator after I found a burner phone in Elena's gym bag 3 weeks ago. She'd been careful but not careful enough. Restaurant receipts on our joint credit card for places she claimed she'd never been. Late-night emergency meetings that didn't match her company calendar. He paused, watching my face carefully. The investigator followed her for 2 weeks. Got photos, timestamps, addresses. Your husband's name came up frequently. Your address too. Why are you telling me this? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Because I'm tired of being the only one who doesn't know what's happening in my own marriage, Marcus said. And I figured you deserved the truth too. I should have thanked him. Should have gathered my things and left. Should have gone home to confront Andrew like a rational adult. Instead, I sat there feeling everything I'd built over the past 5 years crumble around me. I'm sorry, I whispered. Not to Marcus. To myself. To the version of me who'd ignored every instinct, screaming that something was wrong. Marcus watched me with something that looked like understanding. Then his expression shifted. His mouth curved into that slow, deliberate smirk. Forget him, he said, voice dropping lower. Come out with me tonight. The words registered but didn't make sense. What? You heard me. His eyes held mine with startling intensity. Your husband is out there living his best life with my wife. Why should they have all the fun? Every rational thought in my head said no. Said this was insane. Said I should go home, demand answers, call a lawyer, process this betrayal like a responsible person. But I was tired of being responsible. Tired of being the wife who waited patiently at home while her husband built a secret life with someone else. Tired of ignoring my instincts and doubting myself and pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. For once in my life, I wanted to do something impulsive and reckless and completely unlike myself. Yes, I said immediately. Marcus's smirk deepened into something genuine. Something that looked almost like relief. Good. Meet me at the Nest on Pike Street. 8 o'clock. Don't overthink it. He stood, pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote his phone number on the back. He slid it across the table to me. Then he walked out of the Starbucks without looking back. I sat there for another 30 minutes staring at that business card, feeling my carefully constructed life fall apart. And somewhere underneath the shock and hurt and betrayal I felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. Alive. For the first time in a very long time I felt completely, terrifyingly alive. I sat there holding Marcus's business card, watching through the window as he disappeared into the afternoon crowd on Capitol Hill. My coffee had gone cold. My laptop screen had dimmed to black. Around me life continued as normal, people typing, laughing, ordering drinks, while my entire world had just been rearranged. I looked down at the card. Simple. Professional. Just his name and a phone number written in confident handwriting across the back. My hands were shaking. I needed to see more. Needed to understand the full scope of what Andrew had done. Marcus had shown me one photograph, but my mind was already filling in the gaps, imagining all the moments I hadn't seen. All the lies I'd believed. I grabbed my phone and opened a text thread with Andrew. The last message was from this morning. Working late tonight. Client dinner. Don't wait up. I stared at those words. How many times had I read messages exactly like that over the past 6 months? How many times had I accepted them without question? My finger hovered over his contact. I could call him right now. Demand answers. Confront him in real time while my anger was hot and sharp. But something stopped me. If I called now he'd lie. He'd been lying for 6 months. He was good at it. Practiced. And I was tired of being the person who believed him because believing was easier than facing the truth. Instead I did something I'd never done before. Something that felt like crossing a line but also like taking back control. I opened Andrew's location sharing. We'd set it up years ago for practical reasons, so we could see when the other was close to home, coordinate dinner timing, that sort of thing. I rarely checked it anymore. Hadn't had a reason to. Till now. The app loaded. A map of Seattle appeared with a little blue dot representing Andrew's phone. He wasn't at his office downtown. He was at an address in Queen and I didn't recognize. I clicked on the dot. The address pulled up. A high-rise apartment building. Expensive. Modern. The kind of place young professionals with money lived. My stomach twisted. I checked the time. 2:30 in the afternoon. Middle of a workday. Andrew should have been at the office or in meetings. Instead he was at a residential address that wasn't ours. I sat there staring at that blue dot, feeling the last pieces of denial crumble away. This was real. This was happening. Andrew wasn't just having an affair in hotel rooms and restaurants. He was going to her home. In the middle of the day. While telling me he was at work. The humiliation burned hotter than the betrayal. I closed my laptop with more force than necessary. Shoved it into my bag along with Marcus's business card. Left money on the table for my cold coffee and walked out into the Seattle afternoon. The air was cool. Overcast. Typical for October. I started walking without a clear destination, just needing to move. Needing to do something with the energy coursing through my body. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Coffee tomorrow? You've been MIA lately. Want to make sure you're okay. I stopped walking. Stared at that message. Rebecca had been my best friend since college. She knew me better than almost anyone. For months, she'd been gently suggesting something was wrong with my marriage. Asking careful questions. Offering to listen if I needed to talk. I'd brushed her off every time. Made excuses. Defended Andrew. Insisted everything was fine. Now I realized she'd seen what I'd refused to see. I typed back, can't do tomorrow. Something came up. I'll explain soon. Her response came immediately, everything okay? I didn't know how to answer that. Nothing was okay. Everything had just fallen apart. But somehow I didn't feel as devastated as I thought I should. I'll call you later, I wrote back. I kept walking, my mind spinning. I thought about all the times over the past 6 months when Andrew had been distant. Irritable when I asked questions. I'd blamed work stress. Blamed his promotion. Blamed everything except the obvious truth. He'd checked out of our marriage because he was building something else with someone else. And I'd let him. I'd made it easy by not asking hard questions. By accepting his excuses. By being the understanding wife who didn't make demands or create conflict. I thought about the jewelry receipt I'd found 2 months ago while looking for batteries in his nightstand. A purchase from a boutique downtown for over $2,000. I checked my jewelry box immediately, wondering if he'd bought me something for our anniversary. Nothing. I'd asked him about it casually the next day. He'd said it was a gift for a client. Part of a business relationship he was cultivating. I'd believed him because the alternative was too painful to consider. Now I knew. He'd bought something expensive for Elena. While I was at home waiting for him. While I was trying to figure out how to save our marriage. The anger hit me then. Not the hot, explosive kind. Something colder. More deliberate. He'd made a fool of me. For 6 months. While I'd been planning date nights he canceled. Cooking dinners he barely touched. Suggesting couples therapy he dismissed. He'd been somewhere else. With someone else. My phone rang. Andrew's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it. Let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then I declined the call. 30 seconds later a text came through. Hey, just checking in. How's your day going? The casual tone. The fake concern. Like he actually cared about my day. Like he hadn't been at another woman's apartment an hour ago. I typed back, fine. Busy with work. His response was immediate. Same here. Crazy day. Probably going to run late again. I almost laughed. The lie came so easily to him. So smoothly. Like he'd forgotten what truth even felt like. No problem, I wrote back. Take your time. I put my phone away and kept walking. I ended up at Cary Park without really meaning to. The view of downtown Seattle spread out before me. The Space Needle. Elliott Bay. Mount Rainier in the distance. It was beautiful. Peaceful. Nothing like the chaos in my head. I sat on a bench and finally let myself think about Marcus. He'd been living with this knowledge for 3 weeks. Sitting on evidence of his wife's affair. Watching her come and go. Listening to her lies. That had to be torture. But instead of just confronting Elena or filing for divorce quietly, he tracked me down. Found me at a coffee shop I frequented. Sat down beside me and blown up my life with 6 words. What? He'd said he was tired of being the only one who didn't know what was happening in his own marriage. That I deserved the truth. But there was something else. Something in the way he'd looked at me. In that smirk when he'd asked me out. He wanted revenge. Not just against Elena. Against both of them. And he wanted me to be part of it. The wild thing was I understood. I understood the anger. The betrayal. The desire to make them feel even a fraction of what we were feeling. My phone buzzed again. Not Andrew this time. An unknown number. I opened the message. This is Marcus. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. I know that was a lot to process. The offer for tonight still stands. No pressure. Just thought you might want company from someone who understands what you're going through. I read the message 3 times. He was giving me an out. Making it clear I could say no. That there was no obligation. But he'd also given me his number. Made the first move. Opened the door. I thought about going home. Sitting in that empty house. Waiting for Andrew to come back from wherever he actually was. Pretending I didn't know. Playing the role of the oblivious wife for one more night. The thought made me feel sick. I looked out at the Seattle skyline. The city I loved. The life I'd built here. The marriage I'd thought was solid. All of it felt different now. Like I'd been living in a carefully constructed illusion and someone had finally pulled back the curtain. I opened my text thread with Marcus and started typing. I'm okay. Or I will be. What time did you say? The response came within seconds. 8 o'clock. The Nest on Pike Street. I'll be at the bar. I sent back a simple thumbs up. Then I stood from the bench and headed back toward my car. I had 5 hours to figure out what I was doing. 5 hours to decide if I was really going to meet a stranger for drinks while my husband was presumably with his mistress. The old Hannah would have gone home. Would have confronted Andrew. Would have handled this the responsible, mature way. But the old Hannah had been blind. Had ignored her instincts. Had let herself be made into a fool. This Hannah, the one who now knew the truth, wanted something different. I wanted to feel seen. To feel wanted. To feel like I mattered to someone. Even if that someone was a stranger using me for revenge. At least he was honest about it. I drove home with Marcus's text still glowing on my phone screen. 8 o'clock. The Nest on Pike Street. I'll be at the bar. 5 hours. I had 5 hours to decide if I was really doing this. But first I needed to go home. Not to confront Andrew, he wasn't even there, but to see our house with new eyes. To look at the life we'd built and understand how much of it had been real and how much had been performance. The drive from Cary Park to Ballard took 20 minutes. I barely registered the route. My hands gripped the steering wheel. My mind kept replaying that photograph Marcus had shown me. Andrew's hand on Elena's face. The tenderness in his expression. The intimacy. I pulled into our driveway just after 3. Andrew's car was gone, of course. He was presumably still at Elena's apartment in Queen Anne, living his secret life while I'd been sitting on a park bench trying to process the ruins of my marriage. The house looked exactly as I'd left it this morning. Small craftsman with blue-gray siding. Window boxes I'd planted with flowers last spring. A front porch where we used to sit on summer evenings with wine and conversation. It looked like a home. Like a place where two people loved each other. But appearances were lies. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, making everything look warm and inviting. But the warmth was surface level. Underneath, the house felt hollow. Empty of everything that mattered. I walked through the living room slowly, looking at everything like I was seeing it for the first time. Wedding photos on the mantle. Us laughing, kissing, looking at each other like we were the only two people in the world. Furniture we'd picked out together at weekend trips to vintage stores. Books on shelves representing both our tastes, our histories, our shared life. All of it felt like evidence now. Evidence of something that had once been real but wasn't anymore. I moved into the kitchen. The table where we used to eat breakfast together before work. The counter where Andrew would make coffee while I scrambled eggs. Simple domestic rituals that had felt meaningful once. When had we stopped doing those things? When had breakfast become something we did separately, in silence, avoiding eye contact? I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. It had been gradual. Erosion instead of explosion. My phone buzzed. Another text from Andrew. Running even later than I thought. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. 2 words he typed reflexively now. Muscle memory. Meaningless. I didn't respond. Just set my phone on the counter and walked toward our bedroom. This was where I needed to look. Where the evidence would be if there was any to find. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the bed we'd shared for 5 years. The bed where we used to talk for hours before falling asleep tangled together. The bed that had become a neutral zone where we slept on opposite sides, careful not to touch. I walked to Andrew's side. Opened his nightstand drawer. Inside was exactly what I expected and nothing I wanted to see. Breath mints. The expensive cologne in a sleek black bottle I'd never seen him use at home. A leather-bound notebook I'd never noticed before. I picked up the notebook. Opened it. Inside were dates and times written in Andrew's precise handwriting. Abbreviations that didn't mean anything to me at first. Then I looked closer. Key. Is 7 p.m. Queen Anne. Elena's apartment. W. Lunch. Waterfront Marriott. Where Marcus had photographed them. SI. Weekend. San Juan Islands. The bed and breakfast reservation I'd find evidence of later. He'd been keeping a log. Tracking his affair like it was a project. Something to manage and schedule around his real life. Around me. My hands trembled as I set the notebook down. Closed the drawer. I moved to his closet. Opened the door. His suits hung in neat rows. Shirts organized by color. Shoes lined up on the floor. Everything orderly and controlled. Just like his lies. I dragged a chair over from the corner. Climbed up. Reached for the top shelf where Andrew kept things he didn't use regularly. Old tax documents, college yearbooks, boxes of cables and chargers. My fingers found a shoebox pushed toward the back. Different from the others. Newer. I pulled it down. Sat on the edge of our bed. Opened it. Inside were hotel receipts. Dozens of them. Different hotels across Seattle. Dates going back 7 months, not 6 like Marcus had said. 7 months. Beneath the receipts was a handwritten card on expensive stationery. The kind you bought at boutique paper stores, not drugstores. Counting the days until I see you again. You make everything better. E. Her handwriting was elegant. Confident. The words were intimate. Familiar. This wasn't just physical. This was a relationship. Something with depth and history and emotional investment. I set the card aside. Kept digging. A printed email confirmation for a bed and breakfast in the San Juan Islands. The dates matched a weekend 3 months ago when Andrew told me he had a work conference in Portland. He'd left Friday morning with his overnight bag. Came back Sunday evening talking about panel discussions and networking events. All lies. He'd been with Elena. At the place we'd talked about visiting for our anniversary. The romantic island getaway we'd never quite made time for. He'd taken her instead. The betrayal felt physical. Like something cutting through my chest. I put everything back in the box. Put the box back on the shelf. Climbed down from the chair. My phone buzzed again. Not Andrew this time. Okay, now I'm worried. You never blow me off. What's going on? I stared at her message. Rebecca had been my best friend since our sophomore year of college. We'd been roommates for 3 years. Been in each other's weddings. Talked each other through breakups and career changes and every major life decision. She'd known something was wrong with my marriage for months. Had asked careful questions. Made gentle observations. Offered to listen whenever I was ready to talk. I'd shut her down every time. Insisted everything was fine. Made excuses for Andrew. Defended him. Because admitting something was wrong meant facing it. And facing it meant my marriage might actually be over. Now it was over. I just hadn't made it official yet. I typed back, I'm okay. I promise. Just dealing with something unexpected. I'll call you tomorrow and explain everything. Her response came immediately, I'm here whenever you need me. Day or night. I mean it. I smiled despite everything. Rebecca was steady. Loyal. The kind of friend who showed up when things fell apart. I set my phone down and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Andrew tonight. Wasn't going to call him out on his lies or demand explanations. What would be the point? He'd been lying for 7 months. He was practiced at it. He'd have excuses ready. Would make me feel crazy for doubting him. I was done feeling crazy. Instead, I was going to get ready. Put on something that made me feel beautiful. Meet Marcus at that bar. Have drinks with someone who looked at me like I was worth looking at. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe it was reckless. Maybe it was the worst decision I could make. But it was my decision. My choice. For once, I was going to do something for myself instead of waiting around for Andrew to remember I existed. I walked into the bathroom. Turned on the shower. Let the water heat up while I undressed. Standing under the hot spray, I felt the afternoon's shock and hurt start to wash away. Not gone. Just less immediate. Less overwhelming. I'd been living in denial for months. Ignoring every sign. Every instinct. Every moment when something felt off. Now I knew the truth. And knowing meant I could finally stop pretending. I got out of the shower. Dried off. Stood in front of my closet in just a towel. I pulled out a black wrap dress I hadn't worn in over a year. Andrew used to love this dress. Would compliment me every time I wore it. Pull me close. Tell me I looked beautiful. But I'd stopped wearing it because somewhere along the way he'd stopped noticing. Stopped complimenting. Stopped looking at me like I was someone worth seeing. I put on the dress. It still fit perfectly. Still looked good. I did my makeup carefully. Smoky eyes. Red lipstick. The kind of makeup that took effort. That said I cared about how I looked. I hadn't done this in months. Maybe longer. At some point I'd stopped trying. Stopped putting in effort for a man who barely looked at me anymore. I styled my hair in loose waves. Put on heels that made my legs look long. Added simple jewelry, small earrings, a delicate necklace. When I looked in the bathroom mirror I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different. But because the woman staring back looked awake. Alert. Alive. She looked like someone who'd stopped waiting around for her life to start. I grabbed my purse. Checked my phone. 6:30. An hour and a half until I was supposed to meet Marcus. I didn't let myself think too hard about what I was doing. Didn't let myself question or second guess. I just walked out of the house, got in my car and drove toward downtown Seattle. Toward the nest. Toward Marcus. Toward whatever came next. The surprising part wasn't that I was doing this. The surprising part was that I didn't feel guilty at all. I arrived at the nest 15 minutes early. Parked 2 blocks away and sat in my car for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel. What was I doing? I was about to walk into a bar to meet a man I'd known for less than 6 hours. A man who'd shown me proof that my husband was cheating. A man who'd looked at me with those intense blue-gray eyes and asked me to forget Andrew and spend the evening with him instead. This wasn't me. I didn't do impulsive. Didn't do reckless. But the old me, the one who followed rules and made responsible choices, had ended up married to a man who'd been lying to her face for 7 months. Maybe it was time to try something different. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time, touched up my lipstick, took a deep breath. Then I got out of the car and walked toward the bar before I could change my mind. The Nest was exactly the kind of place I expected Marcus to choose. Upscale without being pretentious. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Soft jazz playing just loud enough to create atmosphere without overwhelming conversation. Dim lighting that made everything feel intimate and separate from the outside world. I spotted Marcus immediately. He was leaning against the bar in dark jeans and a fitted navy button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. The casual elegance of someone who knew exactly how good he looked without trying too hard. When he saw me walk in, his entire face changed. Not a polite smile. Real pleasure. Like seeing me was the best part of his day. When was the last time Andrew had looked at me like that? I couldn't remember. "You actually came," Marcus said as I approached. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought there was a 50-50 chance you'd go home, confront your husband, and decide I was just some crazy person who ambushed you at Starbucks." He signaled the bartender. "I'm really glad you didn't." "Honestly," I said, "I considered it." "What changed your mind?" I thought about the shoebox of hotel receipts, the notebook tracking his affair like a project, the 7 months of calculated lies. I realized confronting him wouldn't change anything. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. Something flickered in Marcus's expression. Understanding maybe. Or recognition. The bartender appeared. Marcus ordered whiskey neat. I ordered an old-fashioned because it felt like the kind of drink you ordered when your life was falling apart and you were meeting a stranger in a bar. We took our drinks to a private booth in the corner. The view through the windows was stunning. The Seattle skyline glittering against the dark water, ferries crossing the bay, the city alive with lights and movement. It looked peaceful. Beautiful. Nothing like the chaos inside me. "So," Marcus said, settling into the booth across from me, "how are you feeling?" I laughed. Couldn't help it. "That's a loaded question." "Fair enough." He took a sip of his whiskey. "Let me rephrase. What happened after I left the coffee shop?" I told him. About tracking Andrew's location to an apartment in Queen Anne. About going home and searching through his things. About the notebook and the receipts and the card from Elena. Marcus listened without interrupting. His expression shifted as I talked. Anger, sympathy, recognition. When I finished, he shook his head slowly. 7 months, he said. "Elena told me it started 6 months ago at that conference. But if you found receipts going back 7 months. She lied to you too," I said. "Apparently." He drained the rest of his whiskey. "I hired the investigator 3 weeks ago after I found the burner phone. He confirmed the affair but only tracked them back 6 months. I should have told him to dig deeper. Would it have made a difference?" Marcus considered that. "Probably not. 6 months. 7 months. Either way, they both chose to do this. To lie to us. To build something secret while we sat at home being faithful." The word faithful hit harder than I expected. As I had been faithful. For 5 years of marriage, through all the distance and coldness and neglect, I'd never once considered being with someone else. Till now. "Tell me about Elena," I said, needing to shift the conversation away from Andrew for a moment. Marcus leaned back in the booth. "We met in college. University of Washington. I was studying architecture. She was pre-law. We were together 6 years before we got married." "What was she like then?" "Ambitious. Driven. I liked that about her initially. She knew what she wanted and went after it." He paused. "But somewhere along the way, her ambition became the only thing that mattered. She postponed having kids because she wanted to make partner first. Worked 70-hour weeks. Stopped coming home for dinner. Stopped asking about my day or telling me about hers." Sounded painfully familiar. "I wanted to build a family," Marcus continued. "Design our dream house. Raise kids. Create something lasting. Elena wanted the corner office and her name on the letterhead. Those goals pulled us in different directions until we were basically roommates who shared a last name." "When did you realize it was over?" I asked. "Honestly, about a year ago. But I kept trying. Suggesting date nights she was too busy for. Planning vacations she canceled. Asking if we could talk about having kids and getting shut down every time." He met my eyes. "Sound familiar?" "Painfully." We sat in silence for a moment. The jazz played softly. Around us, other couples talked and laughed, living their normal lives. The investigator said the affair started at a legal conference, Marcus said. Andrew's firm and Elena's firm both had panels. They met at some networking event. Started talking. Exchanged numbers. How romantic, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Right. Marcus signaled the bartender for another round. They connected over their demanding careers and absent spouses. Probably bonded over how hard it is to maintain work-life balance. Then decided the solution was to sleep with each other instead of, actually communicating with the people they married. The bartender brought fresh drinks. I took a long sip of my old-fashioned, letting the whiskey burn down my throat. Can I ask you something? I said. Why did you wait 3 weeks to tell me? You found out about the affair. Hired an investigator. Got all the proof. Why not just confront Elena? Or file for divorce quietly? Why track me down? Marcus studied his glass for a moment before answering. Because I was tired of being the only one who didn't know what was happening in my own life. Elena had been lying to me for months. Making decisions about our marriage without my input. I wanted to give you the same information. The same choice. But there's more to it than that, I said. Isn't there? His mouth curved into that slow, deliberate smirk I'd seen in the coffee shop. You're perceptive. So what's the real reason? Revenge, he said simply. I wanted Andrew and Elena to know what it feels like to be on the other side. To come home and realize your spouse isn't waiting. Isn't sitting there being faithful while you're out building your secret life. I should have been put off by that. By the calculated nature of it. But I wasn't. Because I understood it. Completely. And what do you get out of this? I asked. Besides revenge? Marcus leaned forward. The dim lighting made his eyes look darker. More intense. Honestly, I wanted to meet you. The investigator's report had your name and address. Basic facts. But I wanted to know who you actually were. The woman Andrew was willing to risk everything to betray. The way he said it, not with pity or curiosity but with genuine interest, made my breath catch. And what do you think now? I asked. I think Andrew's an idiot, Marcus said. I think he had something real and traded it for something secret. And I think you deserve better than being someone's backup plan. Something shifted in the air between us. The conversation had moved from shared pain to something else. Something charged and dangerous and electric. I realized I was leaning toward him across the table. That his hand had moved closer to mine. That I wanted him to close the remaining distance. Hannah, Marcus said softly. I need you to know this isn't just about revenge for me. Not anymore. What is it about? This. He reached across the table and took my hand. His touch was warm. Deliberate. This conversation. The fact that I've known you for 6 hours and already feel more connected to you than I have to Elena in the past 2 years. My heart was racing. Marcus. I know it's crazy, he said. I know we're both in the middle of our marriages falling apart. I know this is probably the worst possible timing. But I don't regret approaching you today. Not for a second. I looked at our hands. His fingers laced through mine. The simple intimacy of it. I don't regret saying yes, I whispered. Marcus smiled. Not the smirk this time. Something real and genuine and vulnerable. Good, he said. We stayed at the bar for another hour. Talking about everything and nothing. Our childhoods. Our careers. The dreams we'd had before life got complicated. The things we still wanted if we ever got the chance. Marcus told me about his architecture firm. About designing affordable housing for communities that needed it. About how Elena had always thought he should go into commercial development instead. Where the real money was. I told him about my marketing work. About the startup and the long hours and how throwing myself into my career had become a way to avoid going home to an empty house. Around midnight, Marcus paid the tab and we walked outside. The night air was cool and clear. The waterfront stretched out before us. Dark water reflecting city lights. Walk with me? Marcus asked. I nodded. We walked along the pier, close enough that our shoulders brushed. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. When did you stop being happy? Marcus asked suddenly. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't think it was one moment. It was gradual. Like watching a sunset, where you don't notice it getting dark until you're already in shadow. Marcus stopped walking, turned to face me fully. That's exactly it, he said. That's exactly what it was like with Elena. We stood there on the pier. The water lapped against the pylons below. The city hummed around us. Hannah, Marcus said softly. I know this is insane. We met this afternoon. But I don't regret any of it. Neither do I whispered. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his eyes. Close enough that I could feel his breath. Can I kiss you? He asked. I should have said no. Should have stepped back. Should have remembered I was still technically married. But I didn't want to. Yes, I said. He kissed me. Not tentative or apologetic, but certain and deep, like he'd been thinking about it all night. I kissed him back. My hands found his shoulders. His arms wrapped around my waist. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely, terrifyingly alive. When we finally pulled apart, both of us slightly breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against mine. Come home with me, he said softly. I should have said no. Should have taken a step back. Should have reminded myself I was still technically married, that this was moving too fast, that I needed time to process everything. But I didn't want to say no. Yes, I whispered. Marcus's apartment was in South Lake Union, a 15-minute drive from the waterfront. We didn't talk much during the ride. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine across the center console. The silence felt comfortable. Natural. Like we'd done this 1,000 times before. The building was modern glass and steel. The kind of place successful young professionals lived. We took the elevator to the 8th floor. Marcus unlocked the door and gestured for me to go in first. The loft was exactly what I expected from him. Exposed brick walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Clean lines and thoughtful design. Architectural blueprints scattered across a massive desk in the corner. Bookshelves filled with design books and novels. A space that felt lived in but intentional. It's beautiful, I said. Thanks. I designed most of the interior myself. Marcus moved to the kitchen area. Wine. Water. Something stronger. Water's good. He poured 2 glasses and brought them to the living room. We sat on the couch, close but not touching. Outside the windows, Seattle glittered in the darkness. So, Marcus said. Here we are. Here we are, I echoed. We looked at each other. The weight of what we'd done, what we were doing, hung between us. I should feel guilty, I said. I'm married. I just spent the evening with another man. Kissed him. Came home with him. But I don't feel guilty at all. Neither do I, Marcus said. And I've had 3 weeks to think about this. 3 weeks to decide if revenge was worth it. If involving you was fair. Is it? Fair, I mean. I don't know. He set his water glass down. But I know I meant what I said earlier. This isn't just about revenge anymore. I wanted to meet you because I thought you deserved the truth. But now that I have met you, I'm glad I did. For reasons that have nothing to do with Andrew or Elena. My chest felt warm. Tight. Like something was expanding inside me. Tell me about Portland, I said, needing to shift the conversation to something less intense. You said you grew up there. Marcus smiled. Trying to change the subject? Maybe a little. Fair enough. He leaned back against the couch. I grew up in a neighborhood called Laurelhurst. My parents still live in the same house. They've been married 42 years. Still hold hands. Still laugh at each other's jokes. They set a pretty high bar for what marriage should look like. Is that why you tried so hard with Elena? Probably. I kept thinking if I just tried harder, if I was more patient, more understanding, we'd get to where my parents are. But you can't force that kind of connection. Either it's there or it isn't. I thought about my own parents. Still married. Functional. But not passionate. Not connected in any deep way. They coexisted more than they lived together. I always wanted something more than what my parents had, I said. They're not unhappy exactly. Settled. Like they ran out of things to talk about 20 years ago and decided silence was easier. Is that what scared you about your marriage? Marcus asked. Becoming your parents? Maybe. I hadn't thought about it that way before. Andrew and I used to talk for hours. About everything. Books, politics, dreams, stupid things that didn't matter. Then somewhere along the way we stopped. And I kept telling myself it was normal. That every couple runs out of things to say eventually. But it's not normal, Marcus said. Or it doesn't have to be. My parents still talk. Still debate. Still share things. That's what I wanted with Elena. But she was always thinking about work. Always planning her next career move. I became background noise in her life. We talked until the sky started to lighten. About childhood memories and family dynamics. About career aspirations and the compromises we'd made. About the lives we'd imagined versus the ones we were actually living. Marcus told me about his architecture firm. How he'd started as a junior designer and worked his way to junior partner. How his dream was to design affordable housing for communities that needed it most. How Elena had always thought that was naive. That he should focus on luxury developments where the real money was. I told him about my marketing career. How I'd thrown myself into work as my marriage deteriorated. How being good at my job became a replacement for being happy at home. Somewhere around 5 in the morning we moved to his bedroom. Not for sex. Just to lie down. To be close to someone who understood what it felt like to watch a marriage die slowly. We lay tangled in his sheets as dawn light filtered through the windows. His arm around me. My head on his chest. Both of us exhausted but not ready to sleep. When are you telling Andrew? Marcus asked quietly. I'd been avoiding thinking about that. But I couldn't avoid it forever. Today, I said. This morning. I'm done pretending I don't know. Do you want me to come with you? I considered it. Having Marcus there would make it easier in some ways. But this was something I needed to do alone. No, I said. But thank you. Marcus pulled me closer. Whatever happens, you have my number. Use it. Day or night. I mean it. I nodded against his chest. Around 7 I forced myself to get up. Found my purse. Checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Andrew. 2 texts. Where are you? Getting worried. Call me. I almost laughed. Getting worried. Like he had any right to worry after 7 months of lying. I typed back. Stayed at Rebecca's. Needed space to think. Coming home soon. His response came within seconds. Okay. See you soon. Not, are you okay? Not, what's wrong? Just, okay. Like I was an appointment on his calendar. Marcus drove me back to the Starbucks where this had all started. Less than 24 hours ago, I'd been sitting at that same table thinking my biggest problem was a distant husband. Now I knew the truth. And I had to face it. Thank you, I said before getting out of his car. For telling me. For last night. For all of it. Marcus took my hand. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get messy. I know. But you're doing the right thing. Confronting him. Not letting him keep lying. I nodded. Squeezed his hand once. Then got out and walked to my car. The drive back to Ballard felt surreal. Like I was floating outside my body watching myself go through the motions. Park in the driveway. Walk to the front door. Turn the key. Andrew was in the kitchen making coffee. He wore the suit I'd bought him for his birthday. Navy blue. Perfectly tailored. He barely looked up from his phone when I walked in. How's Rebecca? He asked absently. I set my purse on the counter. Took a breath. I wouldn't know, I said. I didn't stay with Rebecca. That got his attention. He looked up. Confusion flickered across his face. What? I stayed with Marcus, I said calmly. Elena's husband. You know, the woman you've been sleeping with for the past 7 months. All the color drained from Andrew's face. His phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the counter. Hannah. Don't. I held up a hand. I don't want explanations. I don't want apologies. I don't want to hear that it meant nothing or that you still love me. I just want a divorce. The word hung between us. Heavy. Final. Andrew's mouth opened and closed. He looked genuinely shocked. Like the thought of getting caught had never occurred to him. Like he'd actually believed he could maintain 2 separate lives indefinitely. How did you, he started. Marcus found me, I said. Showed me photos. Told me everything. Then I came home and found the rest myself. The notebook in your nightstand. The shoebox of hotel receipts. The card from Elena. Andrew's face went from pale to gray. You went through my things? I almost laughed. That's what you're worried about? My invasion of your privacy. Hannah, please. His voice cracked. We can work through this. It was a mistake. I was confused. She doesn't mean anything. Stop, I said firmly. Just stop. I walked past him toward our bedroom. He followed, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. He'd been stressed. Work was overwhelming. He'd made a terrible mistake. He loved me. He'd do anything to fix this. Couples therapy. Individual therapy. A fresh start. Whatever I wanted. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and started packing. Only my clothes. Personal items. Things that were definitively mine. I didn't want anything we'd bought together. Didn't want reminders of a life that had been built on lies. Hannah, please, Andrew begged. Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll end it with Elena. I'll quit my job if that's what it takes. I'll do anything. I zipped the suitcase closed. Turned to face him. You had 7 months to choose me, I said quietly. 7 months to decide our marriage was worth fighting for. You chose her. Every single day you chose her. Now I'm choosing me. But I love you. No, you don't, I said. You love the idea of having me as backup. Someone to come home to when Elena's too busy. Someone to make you feel like a good person. But you don't actually love me. If you did, you never would have done this. Andrew's face crumpled. So that's it? You're just giving up. I'm not giving up, I said, picking up my suitcase. You already did that. I'm just acknowledging it. I walked toward the door. Andrew grabbed my arm. You said you stayed with Marcus, he said, his voice taking on an edge. Elena's husband. What does that mean? I looked at his hand on my arm. Then at his face. Exactly what you think it means, I said. I pulled free and walked out of the house. Out of the marriage. Out of the life I'd been trying so hard to save. Andrew called my name. Followed me to the driveway. But I was already putting my suitcase in the car. Already getting in. Already driving away. In my rearview mirror I saw him standing in the driveway. Looking lost and smaller than I'd ever seen him. I didn't feel guilty. Didn't feel sad. I just felt free. I drove away from the house with my suitcase in the trunk and no clear destination in mind. Just away. Away from Andrew. Away from the life I'd been trying to save. Away from the person I'd been pretending to be. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Andrew. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined again. Then the text started. Please come back. We need to talk. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Don't throw away 5 years over one mistake. One mistake. Like 7 months of calculated deception was a single error in judgment. I turned my phone on silent and kept driving. Ended up at a coffee shop in Fremont I'd never been to before. Sat in a corner booth with a latte I barely touched and tried to figure out what came next. I couldn't go back to that house. Every room held memories that felt poisoned now. The kitchen where we'd cooked together. The bedroom where we'd slept. The living room where we'd talked about our future. All of it felt like evidence of a beautiful lie. I pulled out my phone and opened a real estate app. Started searching for apartments. Something small. Temporary. Just a place to land while I figured out my next steps. I found a 1-bedroom in Capitol Hill. Available immediately. 6-month lease. Close to work. Close to the Starbucks where this had all started less than 48 hours ago. I called the landlord. Scheduled a viewing for that afternoon. Signed the lease 2 hours later. By evening I had a new address and no furniture except what I'd brought in my suitcase. I texted Rebecca. Can you help me move some things tomorrow? I left Andrew. Her response came within seconds. Oh my God. Yes. I'm coming over right now. Where are you? I sent her the address. 20 minutes later she knocked on my empty apartment door with takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine. Talk, she said, setting the food on the kitchen counter. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about Marcus appearing in the coffee shop. About the photo of Andrew and Elena. About going home and finding the evidence. About confronting Andrew and walking out. I didn't tell her about spending the night at Marcus's apartment. That felt too complicated to explain. Too raw. Rebecca listened without interrupting. When I finished she pulled me into a hard hug. I'm proud of you, she said. For what? My marriage just ended. For choosing yourself, Rebecca said firmly. You could have stayed. Could have tried to fix it. Could have let Andrew convince you it was your fault. Instead you walked away. That takes guts. Her words meant more than she knew. I'd spent 5 years trying to be the perfect wife. trying to fix what was broken. Trying to make Andrew happy at the expense of my own happiness. Choosing myself felt revolutionary. Rebecca helped me make a list of things I needed from the house. Essential items I couldn't live without. We agreed to go back the next day when Andrew would be at work. That night, I slept on an air mattress in my empty apartment. It should have felt depressing. Instead it felt like freedom. The next morning Rebecca and I went back to the house. Andrew's car was gone. I used my key to get in, half expecting him to have changed the locks. But he hadn't. The house felt different in daylight. Smaller. Less significant. We worked quickly. Loaded my clothes, books, laptop, personal items into Rebecca's SUV. I didn't take any furniture. Didn't take the wedding photos or the shared belongings. Just the things that were definitively mine. As we were loading the last box, Andrew's car pulled into the driveway. My stomach dropped. Want me to handle this? Rebecca asked, her voice protective. No, I said. I've got it. Andrew got out of his car slowly. He looked terrible. Rumpled suit. Dark circles under his eyes. Like he hadn't slept. Good, a petty part of me thought. Let him feel a fraction of what I've felt. Hannah, he said. Please. Can we talk? There's nothing to talk about, I said, closing the back of Rebecca's SUV. I ended it with Elena, Andrew said desperately. This morning. Told her it was over. That I want to fix my marriage. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I'd loved. The man I'd married. The man who'd lied to my face for 7 months. You ended it because you got caught, I said. Not because you wanted to. If Marcus hadn't found me, you'd still be seeing her. That's not true. It is true, I cut him off. And even if you did end it, that doesn't change what you did. You made me doubt myself. Made me feel crazy for noticing something was wrong. That's not love, Andrew. That's manipulation. His face crumpled. I love you. I made a mistake. Please don't throw away 5 years. You threw them away, I said. Not me. You. I got in Rebecca's passenger seat. She started the engine. Andrew stood in the driveway watching us drive away. In the side mirror he looked small. Defeated. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No sympathy. Just the strange emptiness of closure. Over the next week I slowly furnished my apartment. Basic pieces from IKEA. A bed frame. A small couch. A kitchen table. Nothing fancy. Just functional. Marcus texted me every day. Never pushy. Just checking in. Asking how I was doing. Offering support if I needed it. We met for coffee 4 days after I'd left Andrew. A neutral location in Capitol Hill. Not the Starbucks where we'd met. Somewhere new. How are you holding up? Marcus asked. Honestly, better than I expected, I said. The apartment is small. The furniture is ugly. But it's mine. No one else's emotional baggage. No lies. Just space to breathe. Marcus smiled. I get that. After Elena and I separated, I felt the same way. Like I could finally think clearly. Have you talked to her? I asked. Once. She called after Andrew ended things with her. Wanted to know if I'd told you. He took a sip of his coffee. I said yes. He called me vindictive. Said I'd destroyed her relationship out of spite. Did you tell her Andrew was married too? I did. She claimed she didn't know at first. That by the time she found out, she was already in too deep. Marcus shook his head. I don't know if I believe that. But it doesn't matter anymore. I filed for divorce last week. How did she take it? About as well as you'd expect. Bigger. Blame. Accusations that I'd given up too easily. He met my eyes. But I didn't give up. She did. When she chose to lie. When she chose him. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Sure. Are you doing this, seeing me because you want to? Or because you're trying to hurt Andrew? The question was fair. Honest. The kind of question someone who'd been lied to would need answered. At first. I admitted. Maybe partly revenge. But now. I'm here because I want to be. Because talking to you feels easy. Like I don't have to pretend or perform. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. Good. Because I'm not interested in being anyone's revenge plot. I want this to be real. Me too, I said. We started seeing each other regularly after that. Coffee dates. Walks through different Seattle neighborhoods. Dinner at quiet restaurants where we could talk for hours without interruption. Marcus told me about his parents in Portland. How they'd been married 42 years. How they still held hands. Still laughed at each other's jokes. How they'd set an example of what marriage could be when both people actually showed up. I told him about my parents in Spokane. Their functional but passionless marriage. How they coexisted more than they lived together. How I'd wanted something different. Something with more connection. We were both learning what we actually wanted. Not what we thought we should want. Not what other people expected. Just what felt true. 3 weeks after I'd left Andrew, Rebecca insisted on meeting Marcus. She invited us both to brunch at her favorite spot in Fremont. I was nervous. Rebecca was fiercely protective. If she didn't like Marcus, she'd tell me. Loudly. Marcus arrived exactly on time, dressed casually but polished. He shook Rebecca's hand. Asked her about her work as a pediatric nurse. Listened when she talked about her kids. Made her laugh with a story about a disastrous architecture project. Halfway through brunch, Marcus excused himself to use the bathroom. The second he was out of earshot, Rebecca leaned across the table. Okay, she said. He's unfairly handsome. I was prepared to hate him on principle because of how this started. But he seems genuine. You think so? Hannah, he looks at you like you hung the moon. Like you're the most interesting person he's ever met. He squeezed my hand. Andrew never looked at you like that. Not even in the beginning. My chest felt warm. I really like him. I can tell. Just be careful. You're still rebuilding. Make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. I am, I said. I promise. When Marcus came back, the three of us talked like old friends. Rebecca told embarrassing stories from our college years. Marcus shared stories about disastrous client meetings. By the end of brunch, Rebecca pulled me aside. He's good for you, she said. I approve. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. As Marcus and I walked to our cars after brunch, he took my hand. Your friend is great, he said. She liked you too. Good. Because her opinion matters to you. And what matters to you matters to me. I stopped walking. Looked at him. Marcus, I said. This is real for me. I need you to know that. He pulled me closer. It's real for me too. We stood there on the sidewalk. Two people rebuilding in the wreckage. Two people choosing honesty over comfort. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We stood there on the Fremont sidewalk, Marcus's words hanging in the air between us. What matters to you matters to me. It felt like a promise. Like something real and solid I could hold on to. Come on, Marcus said, squeezing my hand gently. Let me drive you home. Home. My small apartment in Capitol Hill that barely had furniture. But it was mine. And hearing Marcus call it home made it feel less temporary. Less like a place I was hiding and more like a place I was building. 3 weeks later, Marcus called me on a Thursday evening. His voice sounded different. Tighter. More controlled. I filed for divorce today, he said. Made it official. How do you feel? I asked. Relieved. I agree. All of it at once. He paused. My lawyer was thorough. Presented everything. The photos. The receipts. The timeline. Elena's lawyer tried to argue it was irrelevant since Washington is a no-fault state, but we wanted the record clear. For what purpose? Because her law firm has policies about professional conduct. And apparently, Andrew works with several of Elena's clients. Or worked with them. Past tense. Marcus's voice carried a hint of something dark. Not quite satisfaction. More like grim acknowledgement. Her firm found out about the affair. Called her in for a meeting with the partners. What happened? They gave her a choice. Resign voluntarily with a severance package, or be terminated for ethics violations with nothing. I sat down on my couch. They fired her? Technically she resigned. But it was forced. He tried to fight it at first. Threatened to sue for discrimination. But they had documentation. Evidence that she'd compromised client relationships. Put the firm at risk. Marcus exhaled slowly. She chose the severance. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated. Elena had helped destroy my marriage and now she was facing consequences. But another part, the part that had been where she was now watching a life fall apart, just felt tired. How do you feel about it? I asked. I thought I'd feel good, Marcus admitted. Like justice had been served. But mostly I just feel exhausted. This whole thing is exhausting. I know, I said softly. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The kind of silence that only happens when two people understand each other without needing words. Andrew's not faring much better, I said. Rebecca heard through her network that he was passed over for that VP promotion he'd been working toward. Because of the affair? Officially no. They cited leadership qualities and professional judgment. But everyone knows the real reason. I picked at a thread on my couch cushion. Apparently his firm takes a dim view of affairs that create public embarrassment. Marcus made a sound that might have been a laugh. Funny how that works. They can lie and cheat and think there won't be consequences. Then reality hits. Over the next few months, I heard occasional updates about Andrew through mutual acquaintances. He tried to weather the storm at his firm. Kept his head down. Worked longer hours. But the damage to his reputation was done. 6 months after I'd left him, Rebecca texted me, heard Andrew resigned from his firm. Took a position at some smaller company in Tacoma. Huge pay cut. I stared at that message for a long time. Tried to feel something. Satisfaction. Sympathy. Vindication. But all I felt was a distant sort of emptiness. Like hearing about a stranger's misfortune. Good for him, I texted back. And I meant it. Not sarcastically. Just neutrally. He'd made his choices. Now he was living with them. That had nothing to do with me anymore. Marcus and I had been seeing each other for 8 months when it happened. The moment I'd been half dreading and half expecting since this all started. We were at a restaurant in Belltown. A nice Italian place Marcus had wanted to try. We were talking about his latest project. Designing a community center for a neighborhood in South Seattle. When I saw them. Andrew and Elena. At a table across the room. My stomach dropped. Marcus noticed my expression immediately. Followed my gaze. His jaw tightened. We can leave, he said quietly. No, I said. We were here first. We're staying. Marcus took my hand under the table. His touch was steady. Grounding. I forced myself to look back at Andrew and Elena. Really look at them. They weren't touching. Weren't leaning toward each other. They sat on opposite sides of the table with the body language of two people enduring dinner rather than enjoying it. Elena looked thinner. Her hair pulled back severely. She wore a blazer even though this was clearly a casual dinner. Like she was armoring herself. Andrew looked tired. Older. The confidence he'd always carried had been replaced by something diminished. They were talking but it didn't look friendly. Elena's expression was hard. Andrew's was defensive. They don't look happy, Marcus observed. No, I agreed. They don't. We finished our meal. The food was excellent but I barely tasted it. I was too aware of Andrew and Elena across the room. Too aware of the strange surreal quality of this moment. As Marcus and I were leaving, Andrew looked up. Our eyes met. His face went pale. He said something to Elena. She turned, saw us, and her expression hardened into something cold and furious. Marcus's hand was on the small of my back, guiding me toward the exit. But Andrew stood up. Started walking toward us. Hannah, he said. Can we talk? Elena remained seated, watching with narrowed eyes. I looked at Andrew. This man I'd loved. This man I'd married. This man who'd lied to my face for 7 months. He looked smaller somehow. Like he'd been hollowed out. There's nothing to talk about, I said calmly. He glanced at Marcus, then back at me. I want you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I was selfish and stupid and I destroyed the best thing I ever had. Part of me wanted to agree with him. To make him feel the weight of what he'd done. But that would require caring more than I did. I appreciate that, I said. But I've moved on. You should too. His eyes flicked to Marcus again. To Marcus's hand on my back. With him. That's not your business anymore, I said. Andrew's face crumpled slightly. Like he'd been holding on to hope that maybe eventually I'd forgive him. That maybe we'd find our way back to each other. But that was never going to happen. Goodbye, Andrew, I said. Marcus and I walked out. The cool evening air felt like relief. You okay? Marcus asked once we were outside. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. I didn't feel anything. No anger. No hurt. Just nothing. Like running into someone I used to know a long time ago. Marcus pulled me close. That's growth. Is it? It means you've really moved on. Not just said you have. Actually done it. We walked to his car in comfortable silence. Once inside, Marcus turned to me. For what it's worth, he said, he's an idiot for losing you. I smiled. You're biased. Absolutely. But I'm also right. A few weeks later, Rebecca called me with news she'd heard through her network. So apparently Andrew and Elena's relationship is imploding, she said without preamble. I was at my apartment cooking dinner. I put her on speaker and kept chopping vegetables. What happened? Turns out the excitement was only there when it was secret. Once they were both single and could actually be together publicly, reality hit. They fight constantly. About money, about jobs, about whose fault everything is. Interesting. Elena blames Andrew for being careless. Says he's the reason they both got caught and lost everything. Andrew blames Elena for being too ambitious. For not being satisfied with what they had. I thought about that. About two people who'd destroyed their marriages for a fantasy. Who'd built something on deception and secret moments and the thrill of getting away with it. Of course it couldn't survive daylight. They're realizing what they had wasn't real, I said. It was just an escape from their actual problems. And now that it's their only reality, it's not enough. Exactly, Rebecca said. Karma's working overtime. I thought about that word. Karma. Like the universe was balancing scales. Making things fair. But it wasn't karma. It was just consequences. Natural outcomes of choices made. Andrew and Elena had chosen deception. Had chosen stolen moments over genuine partnership. Had chosen fantasy over the hard work of real commitment. And now they were discovering that what they'd built couldn't hold weight. Couldn't sustain them. Couldn't be what they'd imagined when it was shiny and secret and forbidden. I don't even feel vindicated, I admitted to Rebecca. I just feel distant from it. Like it's happening to people I don't know anymore. That's because you've moved on, Rebecca said. Really moved on. You're building something real with Marcus. Something honest. What they had was always going to collapse. He was right. What Marcus and I had wasn't built on secrets or deception. It was built on honesty. On choosing each other with full knowledge of our baggage and complications. On showing up as ourselves instead of idealized versions. That night I told Marcus what Rebecca had shared. We were at his apartment cooking dinner together. It had become our routine. Taking turns at each other's places. Building small domestic rituals. How do you feel about it? Marcus asked, stirring pasta sauce. Honestly, nothing. Maybe a little sad that they destroyed so much for something that was never going to last. Marcus turned off the stove. Came over to where I was sitting at the counter. We're not them, he said. I know. What we're building is different. Better. Real. I looked at him. This man who'd walked into my life in the most unexpected way. Who'd given me truth when I'd been drowning in lies. I know, I said again. And I did. Marcus pulled me close in his kitchen, the pasta cooling on the counter behind us. What we're building is different, he'd said. Better. Real. And he was right. Over the next few months, what Marcus and I had together stopped feeling like something new and fragile. Started feeling like home. We developed routines. Sunday mornings at the farmer's market in Ballard. Wednesday evenings cooking dinner together. Friday nights trying new restaurants or just staying in with wine and conversation that lasted until midnight. We talked about everything. Our childhoods. Our failed marriages. The things we'd learned about ourselves. The things we wanted going forward. Marcus told me about his dreams for his architecture firm. About wanting to take on more community projects. About designing spaces that actually helped people instead of just making money. I told him about my career ambitions. About maybe starting my own marketing consultancy someday. About wanting to work with companies that aligned with my values instead of just taking any client that paid well. We were building something. Not just a relationship. A life. Together. A year after that encounter in Starbucks, Marcus brought up meeting my parents. Thanksgiving's coming up, he said. We were at his apartment, both working on our laptops at opposite ends of his couch, our feet touching in the middle. What are you doing? Usually I go to Spokane. Visit my parents. I looked up from my screen. Why? Can I come with you? My chest tightened. Not with anxiety. With something warmer. You want to meet my parents? I want to be part of your life, Marcus said simply. All of it. Not just the parts that happen in Seattle. So we drove to Spokane for Thanksgiving. 5 hours through eastern Washington, the landscape changing from evergreen forests to rolling hills to flat agricultural land. My mother had been skeptical when I told her about the divorce. Worried I was making a mistake. Concerned about what people would think. She'd liked Andrew. Thought we were the perfect couple. But when she met Marcus, saw how he helped carry groceries in, how he asked genuine questions about her garden, how he made me laugh in the kitchen while we prepped vegetables, her concerns melted away. My father pulled me aside after dinner while Marcus was helping my mother with dishes. He's good for you, Dad said. You seem happy. Really happy. I am. I didn't realize how long it had been since I'd seen you like this, he continued. The last few years with Andrew you seemed dimmed somehow. Like you were working really hard at being okay but weren't actually okay. His observation hit me harder than expected. I hadn't realized how much I'd been pretending. How much energy I'd spent maintaining the appearance of a happy marriage while quietly suffocating inside. I was pretending, I admitted. For a long time. I didn't want to admit my marriage was failing. Didn't want to admit I'd made a mistake. Dad squeezed my shoulder. It wasn't a mistake. It just didn't work out. And that's okay. What matters is you found the courage to leave when you needed to. That night, driving back to Seattle, Marcus reached over and took my hand. Your parents are great, he said. They liked you too. I was nervous, he admitted. I know how this whole thing started. I know it looks bad from the outside. Guy finds out his wife is cheating, tracks down the other woman's husband, convinces her to go out with him. It sounds like a revenge plot. It was a revenge plot, I said. At first. You admitted that. At first, Marcus agreed. But then it became something else. Something real. And I was worried your parents would only see the beginning. Not what we've become. What have we become? I asked. Marcus glanced at me, then back at the road. Something I never thought I'd have again. A real partnership. With someone who actually sees me. Who I can be honest with. I feel the same way. Good, Marcus said. Because I'm not letting you go. 6 months later, my lease was up on the Capitol Hill apartment. I'd been dreading the decision about whether to renew or find something bigger. The apartment had served its purpose. A place to land, to rebuild, to figure out who I was outside of my marriage to Andrew. But it had always felt temporary. Like a way station, not a destination. Marcus and I were having dinner at his place when he brought it up. Your lease is up next month, he said. Yeah. I've been meaning to look for something new. Marcus set down his fork. Or you could move in here. I looked at him. Are you sure? Hannah, you're here 5 nights a week anyway. Your toothbrush is in my bathroom. Your clothes are in my closet. We're already living together in everything but name. That's different than making it official. I know, Marcus said. That's why I'm asking. Not because it's convenient. Not because it makes financial sense. But because I can't imagine waking up anywhere that doesn't include you. Because I want this to be our space. Not mine. Ours. I felt tears prick my eyes. Happy ones. Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. Moving in together was seamless. We painted the loft's accent walls a warm gray. Hung my artwork next to his architectural prints. Combined our book collections on the shelves. Created a space that felt like both of us. One evening, unpacking the last box in the kitchen, Marcus wrapped his arms around me from behind. Thank you, he said. For what? For saying yes. That first night at the coffee shop. For taking a chance on something completely insane. I turned in his arms. Looked at his face. This man who'd walked into my life in the most unexpected way. Best decision I ever made, I said. And I meant it. 2 years after that first kiss on the waterfront pier, Marcus took me back to that exact spot. It was evening. The Seattle skyline glittered across the dark water. The air was cool and clear. The same kind of night as that first time, when he'd asked if he could kiss me and I'd said yes without hesitation. Why are we here? I asked, though I suspected I knew. Marcus took both my hands. Because this is where everything changed. For both of us. This is where we stopped being 2 people drowning in bad marriages and started being something else. He let go of my hands. Got down on one knee. My breath caught. I know this started in chaos, Marcus said, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. I know we met in the worst possible way. I know I walked into your life and blew it up without asking permission. Marcus. But somewhere in the wreckage, he continued, I found the best thing that ever happened to me. You're honest. You're brave. You chose yourself when it would have been easier to stay small and keep pretending. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, with a single stone that caught the city lights. I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you back, Marcus said, his voice catching slightly. Marry me, Hannah. Not to replace what we lost, but to build something better. I said yes through tears. Happy tears. The kind I'd forgotten existed during those last years with Andrew. Marcus slid the ring onto my finger. Stood up. Pulled me into a kiss that felt like a promise. We got married 6 months later at a botanical garden in the Columbia City neighborhood. Small ceremony. Just close friends and family. Flowers everywhere. Natural light streaming through the glass conservatory. Rebecca stood beside me as maid of honor, crying happy tears through the entire ceremony. Marcus's best friend from architecture school stood beside him, grinning like he'd never seen Marcus this happy. My parents sat in the front row. My mother cried. My father smiled. Marcus's parents welcomed me like I'd always been part of their family. Told me they'd worried about Marcus during his marriage to Elena. Were grateful he'd found someone who truly saw him. At the reception, Rebecca pulled me aside. You look happy, she said. Like genuinely, completely happy. I am, I said. I'm proud of you. For leaving Andrew. For choosing yourself. For building this. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, Rebecca said firmly. But I'm glad I got to be here for it. Later that evening, Marcus and I stood on the small dance floor. Soft music played. His arms wrapped around me. Our friends and family watching with genuine joy. What are you thinking? Marcus whispered. That my life is nothing like I planned, I said. And I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the messy beginning? Especially not the messy beginning. Without it, I wouldn't be here. Marcus pulled me closer. I love you, Hannah. Thank you for taking a chance on me. I love you too, I said. And thank you for giving me the truth. Even when it hurt. We danced in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been broken and decided to build something real from the pieces. As the evening wound down, as guests said their goodbyes and headed home, I thought about Andrew. Wondered if he'd ever found what he was looking for. Wondered if Elena had either. Then I let the thought go. They weren't my concern anymore. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. Marcus took my hand. Ready to go? I looked at him. My husband now. My partner. The man who'd walked into a coffee shop and changed everything. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. We walked out into the Seattle night. Hand in hand. Starting the next chapter of our lives. Together. Honestly. With no secrets. No lies. Just two people who'd been hurt and decided to build something better. And it all began with 6 words from a stranger I didn't know. Your husband is seeing my wife. The worst and best thing that ever happened to me. Because sometimes the door you're terrified to walk through is the one that leads you home. And sometimes the life you didn't plan is better than the one you did. I'd spent 5 years trying to save something that was already dead. Trying to be enough for someone who'd already chosen someone else. The day I let go was the day I finally started living. And I'd never been happier. If this story of unexpected betrayal and second chances had you hooked from start to finish, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Hannah confronted Andrew with zero emotion, showing him she'd completely moved on. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Want more powerful stories of starting over and finding real love?